My name is Margaret. I am 79 years old as I begin telling you this story, and these words are not easy for me to say. I speak slowly now, not because my mind is weak, but because every sentence carries a lifetime inside it. I never imagined that one day I would sit alone, talking to memories instead of people, telling my story to the quiet walls of a small, cold room. Once my house was full of noise, once my name was spoken with warmth. I was born in a time when life was simple but heavy. There was no comfort handed to us freely. We earned everything with tired hands and patient hearts. I married young not because I was ready, but because that was what women did in those days. My husband was not a bad man, but he was a silent one. Most of the weight of life rested on my shoulders, and I carried it without complaint. I gave birth to 3 sons. They were my world. I remember the first time I held my eldest son. His fingers wrapped around mine, so small and trusting. In that moment, I promised him something I never said out loud. I will never leave you. I made the same promise to the second, and then to the third. I didn't know then that promises from a mother are often remembered only by the mother herself. Raising 3 boys was not easy. There were days when I skipped meals so they could eat, nights when I stayed awake, listening for coughs, fearing sickness, fearing loss. I washed clothes by hand until my knuckles cracked. I worked small jobs when I could, cleaned other people's homes, cooked for others, just to keep my own children warm. I taught them right from wrong. I taught them respect, kindness, patience. When they cried, I was there. When they failed, I lifted them. When they were afraid, I stood in front of them and took the fear for myself. I thought this was how life worked. I thought love given would return. As the years passed, my sons grew tall and strong. They went to school, then to work. I was proud of them, so proud that I spoke of them to anyone who would listen. I said, "My sons are good men." I believed it with my whole heart. Their father passed away quietly one winter. After that, the house felt emptier, but I still had my boys. Or so I thought. Slowly, without warning, they began to drift away. Not physically at first, but emotionally. Conversations grew shorter. Visits became rare. Phone calls turned into excuses. They are busy, I told myself. They have their own lives. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to complain. Then came the day I fell ill. Nothing dramatic, just weakness, trembling hands, pain that didn't leave. I called my eldest son. He said he would come tomorrow. Tomorrow became next week. Next week became silence. I called the second son. He answered but sounded distant, uncomfortable. He told me I should rest, that everything would be fine. He did not come. The youngest didn't answer at all. That was the first time I felt truly cold, not from the weather but from understanding. A quiet realization settled in my chest. I am alone. At 79, I had to learn how to survive again. Not physically, but emotionally. I sold the house I once filled with laughter. I moved into a small place with thin walls and thinner memories. Each morning I make tea for 1 cup. Sometimes I pour too much, out of habit, then remember there is no one else to serve. I do not hate my sons. That is the hardest truth to explain. I only wish they remembered who held their hands when they couldn't walk, who stayed when everyone else left, who gave everything without ever asking for anything in return. This is not a story of anger. It is a story of quiet heartbreak, and this is only the beginning. The years they forgot. My name is Miriam, and this is the part of my life where silence became louder than words. After my sons grew older, life slowly changed its color. Not suddenly, not in one day. It happened quietly, the way winter comes, soft at first, then cold everywhere. When they were young, they needed me for everything. I was their strength. I was their safety. I was their whole world. But when they became men, the world became theirs, and I slowly disappeared from it. They married. They built their own lives. New voices filled their homes. New priorities took my place. At first, they still called. "Mother, how are you? Mother, pray for us." But calls became shorter, then less frequent. Then weeks passed, then months. I told myself, they are busy. This is life. I defended them even when my heart felt heavy. I remember one winter evening clearly. The house was cold. The heater was broken. I wrapped myself in an old shawl and waited for the call that never came. I thought, maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow came. Still nothing. I learned something painful in those days. Loneliness does not scream. It whispers. It sits beside you at the table. It sleeps next to you at night. It walks with you everywhere. Sometimes neighbors would ask, "Where are your sons? Why don't they visit?" I smiled. I always smiled. I never wanted the world to know that the children I gave my life to had forgotten the woman who gave them life. There were days I had no food except bread and tea, days when my body ached but no one noticed, days when I talked to myself just to hear a voice. I remembered the nights I stayed awake when they were sick, the days I worked until my hands hurt, the dreams I buried so theirs could live. And now, I was invisible. One day I fell in the kitchen. I stayed on the floor for hours. I didn't scream, because I knew. No one was coming. That day, something inside me changed. I realized that waiting was killing me. Waiting for love, waiting for gratitude, waiting for my sons to remember. I wiped my tears, stood up slowly, and looked at myself in the mirror. I was old. I was tired, but I was still alive. And that was the moment I decided, if no one would save me, I would save myself. My name is Margaret, and now I am 79 years old. The winters grew colder after my sons left. Not just outside, but inside the house, and inside me. The silence became my companion. At first, it felt like punishment. I would sit by the window every morning, watching people walk past, wondering how a woman who gave her entire life to her children could end up eating dinner alone. But something changed when you have nothing left to lose. One evening, as I struggled to lift a pot from the stove, my hands shaking, I suddenly laughed. A quiet laugh. Not because it was funny, but because I finally understood something I had never allowed myself to see. I had lived my whole life waiting to be valued. Waiting for my husband to notice my sacrifices. Waiting for my sons to say thank you. Waiting for someone to tell me I mattered. And while I was waiting, life passed. That night, I sat at the small wooden table where I once helped my children with homework. I placed a candle in the center and lit it. The flame was small, fragile, but steady. I looked at it and whispered to myself, I am still here. The next morning, I did something I had not done in years. I went outside, not to wait, but to walk. My legs were weak. My steps slow, but every step felt like rebellion against the belief that my life was over. I began visiting the local library. I didn't go to read at first. I went to sit among people, to hear pages turn, to feel human again. One day, a young woman sat beside me and asked if the seat was taken. I smiled and said no. She asked my name. No one had asked me that in weeks. As days passed, I started helping where I could. I knitted scarves and donated them. I helped another elderly woman cross the street. Small things, invisible things. But for the first time, they were mine, not done for praise or approval. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It was from my eldest son. He wrote that life was busy, that he hoped I was doing okay. There was no apology, no guilt, just distance wrapped in polite words. And you know what? I didn't cry. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer, not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer controlled me. I finally understood this truth. Children may forget you. People may leave. Love may not return the way you gave it, but your worth does not disappear with their absence. I stopped living as the forgotten mother and started living as a woman who survived loss, silence, and abandonment, and still chose kindness. Now, when I sit by the window, I don't wait anymore. I watch the world with peace, because even at 79, even after being left behind, I found a new life. Not in someone else's arms, but in my own heart. Before I go, I want to say this to everyone listening. Life moves fast. Parents grow old quietly. Children become busy, not because they are bad, but because life distracts them. If your mother or father is still alive, call them. Sit with them. Listen to their stories even if you have heard them before. One day their voice will only live in your memory. Love is not expensive. Respect does not take time. Regret, however, lasts forever. Thank you for listening to my story. May you choose kindness before it is too late. Goodbye, and take care of the hearts that once took care of you.